Every year is a different year in fantasy football, which is why after about 100 drafts, I can confidently say that some of the draft strategies that have been historically really well, I am not actually vibing with in this particular draft cycle. So today, I'm going to use both my personal feelings and my gut instinct, along with historical great draft strategies, to combine for the best draft strategies that I think winning teams will be using in 2025. So just make sure to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So the first draft strategy I want to get into, and before I discuss it, I just want to make sure that everybody understands two things. Number one, this is not going to be in any particular order. I have utilized all these draft strategies, and I see a lot of positives with all of them. The number two thing that I want to make clear is that this is particularly geared for best ball right now. I will discuss redraft draft strategies in a later video, but today we're going to go through the best ball strategies this year. So the first one that I want to go through, and I'm going to highlight the first 5 rounds, is to go RB1 round 1, wide receiver 1 round 2, quarterback 1 round 3, wide receiver 2 round 4, and wide receiver 3 round 5. So again, that is through the first 5 rounds of your draft, which is obviously basically one of the most important parts of your draft is right away. You want to make sure you're hitting on several players in the first 5 rounds. So I've been discussing this and using this tool on a lot of my fantasy football draft videos during the offseason, which is I go to rotoviz.com. And this is not a sponsor of mine. They are getting free advertisers right now because I really like their Underdog best ball roster construction explorer rate on rotoviz.com. I think it's a great tool because it gives you historical data over the last 3 years in best ball on Underdog to give you the most successful and unsuccessful draft strategies through the first 5 rounds, and you can utilize this tool a bunch of different ways. So typically what I usually do when I'm picking with this kind of strategy right here is I'm picking from the 102 to the 105. If I get the 101, I'm obviously going to go Jamar Chase, but if I get the 102, I'm probably going to go with Bijan Robinson. If I get the 103, I'll go with Saquon. Sometimes if I get like the 106 or something like that, I'll end up going with Jahmyr Gibbs. But typically I like to utilize this draft strategy earlier in the draft because I like the running backs at the beginning of the draft more than I do at the end of the first round. So then when we get to round 2, you're obviously going to be at the back of the second round, meaning that sometimes you'll be left with a Drake London and get lucky. And if I can get Drake London in the second round of this strategy, I'm going to feel really good about it. I think Rashee Rice is also a key target of mine. I think that shouldn't surprise anybody. I'm a big Rashee Rice guy for the second year in a row. I think still people are undervaluing him at his current price in Underdog best ball drafts right now. Then you go to the quarterback in the third round, and obviously this is going to be either Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Now, I've made it very clear in my quarterback rankings that I will always prefer Josh Allen over Lamar just because there is such a bust-proof quality with him that I really don't think any other player in fantasy football, period, actually possesses like he does. He is injury-proof, and he is, as long as he's out there, which he will be out there, he's going to be getting 20 to 25 fantasy points per game. Like, if you want a bust-proof player, I think Josh Allen is the ultimate bust-proof player, which is why I'm really big on going with quarterback early, and that's a huge reason Josh Allen is one of my most drafted players for the second year in a row again. Then when you get to round 4, I'm typically looking at guys like Xavier Worthy, Jameson Williams, Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf in this type of range here, because one of the things I like to do, especially if I get a wide receiver that I think is going to be a volume hog, like a Drake London or Rashee Rice in the second round, I'll go in the 4th round and try to hit on a big play wide receiver. Somebody like a Worthy, somebody like a Jameson Williams, somebody like a DK Metcalf. If I go with Sutton, I want to make sure I get that big play from round 5. And the round 5 guys I'm always targeting are Zay Flowers and Jalen Waddle. Now, typically, Jalen Waddle has been my most drafted player between the two over the offseason. I have expressed it all offseason, basically. I'm a big Jalen Waddle guy in 2025. But Zay Flowers, again, if I go with one of those 3 guys, Worthy, Jameson Williams, or DK Metcalf in round 4, I'm typically wanting to get a little bit more of a stable production. And I believe Zay probably has a more stable floor than Jalen Waddle does. So I'm going to go ahead, and what I want to do on every one of these draft strategies as well is walk you through one of my drafts that I've done over the offseason. Out of the 100 that I've done, where I've utilized this draft strategy so you can kind of get a face to the name of how this strategy actually looks on paper. So you can see my team on the screen right now. Bijan Robinson, Rashee Rice, Josh Allen, DK Metcalf, Jalen Waddle in the first 5 rounds right there. You can also see the next couple rounds as well, just to give you guys a little taste of how the rest of the draft went. But this is a good draft in my opinion. I was really happy with the way this shook out. And it's going to be a draft strategy to continue to use because, again, your advance rate on Underdog in this strategy is 24.8% in the playoffs. Now, to play around with this tool a little bit, what you will see here, before you start even drafting anybody, right away, like as soon as you join an Underdog best ball draft, you will have about a 16% chance of making it to the playoffs. So you want to increase that percentage chance round by round. And to get to 24.8%, that's a really strong advancement rate to the playoffs. Then you get to the semifinals, that's a significant cut down out of the first round. Only the number 1 team in the first round of playoffs advances to the semifinals. So that is where you get a 4.35% advancement rate. Again, you compare that to where you just started from before even drafting. That's an enormous leap there. So I want to utilize that more. And then to get to the finals at a 0.2.4% clip, that's a really big difference right there. So again, I think this is a very wise strategy. I think it's historically proven. And based on ADP of a lot of guys this year, I think it's going to be a strong one again. Now, the next draft that I like to do is going to be running back again early. And it's going to be running back 1 in round 1, running back 2 in round 2, quarterback 1 in round 3, wide receiver 1 in round 4, and tight end 1 in round 5. So again, this is another roster construction rate here through the first 5 rounds where you're getting really strong numbers for playoff advancement, semifinals advancement, and for finals advancement. Your finals advancement is actually stronger than it was on the previous draft strategy here. So if you're really gunning for the gold, this is actually a better strategy to utilize by going double hero running back in this situation. So this is another one of those that I usually only try this one from the 102 or the 103, and I will get into why. That tight end 1 in round 5, it's very hard to come by. It's really hard. So again, I like to go with Bijan or Saquon at the 102 or 103, depending on if Bijan is available. I will always take Bijan Robinson first because of a personal preference of mine that I've stated a lot of times in recent videos. You could go back and watch the running back rankings video to get a little bit more. Now in round 2, you go with another running back here to really make this a double anchor running back strategy. You go with Devon Achane, Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving. Those are really, really strong options here at the back of the second round. And usually 2 of those guys are available, Josh Jacobs and Bucky Irving. Achane is typically not available at the back of the second round. If he does fall to you, though, you're in really good shape. And I would not hesitate to draft Devon Achane in the second round. Then you go to round 3 with Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Again, same thing applies. I'm always going to go with Josh Allen over Lamar, but if Lamar is the only one there in that range, I will absolutely go Lamar over Jaden Daniels, for example. And then in round 4, Worthy, Jameson Williams, Sutton, DK again. Same type of deal as the last one. And the tight end. Again, this is a very, very difficult draft strategy to acquire in 2025. And that's why I believe if you can actually hit on this one, it will make the world of difference. Because George Kittle is the only tight end who is worth taking in the 5th round. That's the bottom line. Because the gap between him and the tight end 4 on Underdog, which is Sam Laporta, is more than that. You cannot go out of your way and overdraft Sam Laporta at the front of the 5th round. It just is not good draft strategy here because you could get him in the 6th round in all likelihood. So with George Kittle here, the problem that I've run into is that his draft price is increasing. His draft price has pretty much increased steadily to a back to mid 4th round pick. So that's why I do not have a single team like this so far. But I'm going to keep trying to do this right here because there is another strategy that if you do not succeed through the first 5 rounds, but if you do succeed through the first 4 rounds of that strategy, running back 1, running back 2, quarterback 1, wide receiver 1, and then George Kittle goes off the board before your 5th overall pick, you should go with a wide receiver 2. And that you can clearly see that the finals advancement rate in particular is not nearly as strong. But if you look at the playoff advancement rate, and the semifinals advancement rate, it's very, very similar between the two draft strategies. Now, here's where this underdog tool on RotoViz gets really, really interesting, is that you can actually really play around with this tool and get creative with it. So as you can see on the screen right here, you can see the column on the left, and it says tight end. So then it lists numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what that means here is that if I have one tight end on my roster, my finals advancement rate is 0%. So you don't want to do that type of strategy. If you have two tight ends on your roster, 0.1% chance of finals advancement, that's a lot stronger number than obviously number 1 and number 3 at 0.01% advancement rate to the finals. But where it gets interesting here, and I've actually created this build a couple times, is 4 tight ends actually has a finals advancement rate of 0.21%. Now, again, if you compare that to one of the stronger draft strategies that I went over at the beginning at 0.24% advancement to the finals, that's a really good number to actually target right there. So this is a strategy right here that you have to get creative with it, because you can't just go based on that 0.06 finals advancement rate number at the bottom and say you're screwed. You're actually going to be able to manipulate that number by going with either 2 tight ends or 4 tight ends. And you can actually go to the top left of the screen and click on wide receiver, running back, how many running backs, how many wide receivers, how many quarterbacks you want on your team. So again, this is a draft strategy that I've actually utilized a decent number of times, particularly with the four tight ends, because it's a very unique team to get. And again, when you're getting this type of draft strategy with this level of advancement rate to the playoffs, to the semis, and to the finals, it's a strategy that's very well utilized over the years, and I think that it actually can work in 2025 as well. So I wanted to explain a draft that I did that's like that. So you can see that it was Christian McCaffrey and Devon Achane that I went in the first 2 rounds at anchor running backs. I like that strategy a lot. I think those 2 guys have big potential to hit. Then you go Josh Allen in the 3rd, Xavier Worthy in the 4th, Jordan Addison in the 5th round. So this was a strategy that I'm going to continue to utilize right here. Now, if you've noticed so far, these are my favorite anchor/double anchor running back strategies that I've utilized in 2024. Highest advancement rate and just gut feeling, I think it's the best strategy that you could use in 2025 if you want to go with an anchor or a double running back anchor strategy. And of course, if you do want to take advantage of it, there are Underdog drafts live, some for really big money, some for still good money. I advise you to get in on it because I won $19,000 playing Underdog last year by doing these best ball drafts. So to get into it, there is a link down there in the comments. You can grab that link, use code FFN to sign up for Underdog, and they'll match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 of bonus cash. Again, get in Best Ball Mania, get in one of these other drafts. There's tons of drafts to get into. You can utilize one of these draft strategies to give yourself a good chance of playoff advancement. Now, getting into my wide receiver early strategies, because this is typically where I naturally lean, given that Underdog Best Ball is a 3 wide receiver format. So you typically are wanting to get your first 3 wide receivers within the first 5, 6, maybe 7 rounds at the very minimum here. So the first strategy I'm going to go over that's wide receiver early is wide receiver 1 in the first, tight end 1 in the second, wide receiver 2 in the third, quarterback 1 in the fourth, and wide receiver 3 in the fifth. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. Before I even actually knew what the statistics were on this, I was leaning towards this strategy a lot. Like, Brock Bowers is one of my favorite picks, and I'll get into him here in a little bit later because I also like Trey McBride. But if you actually look at the finals advancement rate, the semi-advancement rate, and the playoff advancement rate, historically, not only is it a really good strategy to utilize and a high advancement percentage, but it's also very underutilized. You can see the total number of teams here that have used this strategy, 1,892 total teams. Now, again, that sounds like a lot, right? But you go back to some of those other strategies, like the one that we just previously went through, that's over 12,000 teams that are like that. So this is a type of team that's very unique build and could really advance you if all of these guys hit. So typically where I find myself utilizing this strategy here is going to be the mid to late first round. If I'm getting Puka Nacua, Malik Nabers, Nico Collins at the wide receiver spot in the first round, I'm going to target this strategy here because I'm going to be able to turn around pretty early in the second and grab Brock Bowers. Now, Brock Bowers, I love. I've discussed him several times this offseason. I think that he is going to be easily the tight end 1, And I also think that he has so much potential to be the new Travis Kelce. Now, I understand issues that people have. Not really, but I want to try to understand people's concerns, because if you want to utilize this draft strategy, but don't love Brock Bowers, you can wait and try to get a Trey McBride. So you could use your first round pick on a CeeDee Lamb early in the first and then get Trey McBride at the back of the second. I also think that's a very worthy strategy here, because I think Trey McBride is also worthy of a second to third round pick. So Trey McBride, if he hits, he's going to get more touchdowns this year, hopefully. It could hit in a big way. And then in the third round right here, I like the wide receivers like Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith-Njigba, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans. Those are typically my wide receiver targets in the third round. So all those guys I'm good with. I feel like I have two really strong wide receiver twos that could potentially be wide receiver ones with Marv and JSN in particular. Then you go to the quarterback in round 4, and this is particularly also why I love this strategy. Jalen Hurts all day. If I get Jalen Hurts in the 4th round, I'm very happy. And of course, his underdog price is 4th round. Jalen Hurts in the 4th round, I believe, is going to be a screaming value this year. I think he's going to be a better fantasy quarterback than Jaden Daniels. I'm really big on Jalen Hurts in the 4th round. And then in the 5th round at wide receiver, again, Zay or Jalen Waddle. Those are my two targets right here. So to see a team that I did recently, actually, that was like this, I actually did this on a live stream where I got Puka Nacua in the 1st, Brock Bowers in the 2nd, Devontae Adams in the 3rd. So I got that Puka Devontae Adams super stack potential, which I was able to get Matt Stafford late in the draft to utilize that super stack potential right there. So I was really happy with that super stack. Then I got Jaden Daniels in the 4th, and then Courtland Sutton in the 5th. Now, the only reason in this particular draft that I picked Jaden over Jalen Hurts is because I've utilized a lot more of Jalen Hurts. And I wanted to be true to myself, since I'm in so many drafts, to diversify my assets, because that is a strategy that actually does work a lot. The more drafts you get into, you want to take advantage of grabbing different players. If you grab all the same players and you're in 20, 30 drafts, if all those players don't work, you're not going to have a chance to make the playoffs. You want to diversify your assets a little bit here. So that's the only reason I went with Jaden over Jalen. But I will always, most of the time, always take Jalen Hurts over Jaden Daniels. That was an outlier draft right there. Now, again, I do like this strategy right here, but this is a more statistically strategic type of draft strategy that I don't typically go with. And I want to be honest about that, because it's not something that I just lean towards more than I view it as just a statistical advantage. So these next two, the final two strategies I'm going to go through today, I am naturally leaning towards. So the first one of these two is wide receiver 1 in the 1st, wide receiver 2 in the 2nd, wide receiver 3 in the 3rd, quarterback 1 in the 4th, and running back 1 in the 5th. Now, again, these are strategies that I am naturally leaning towards. They don't necessarily have the best ball advancement rate historically, but I think that this year with the ADPs of certain players, these are the strategies I love the most right now. So as you can see, based on your advancement rates, they're not terrible, but they're not that strong either. Your playoff advancement chance is 17.7%. That's just like a 1% increase from where you originally started before you drafted anybody. So that's not a super strong playoff advancement rate. Then your semifinals advancement rate, actually really good. 2.28% of these teams actually do make the semifinals. So if you do hit, you could hit big. And then your finals advancement rate is 0.08%. So again, not super weak, but not super strong either. So you want to be more strategic and utilize the tool effectively. So again, if you look at the tight ends here, you take one tight end, you have a 0% chance of making the finals. Avoid one tight end in this strategy. Two tight ends, 0.13% chance of making the finals. Utilize two tight ends in this strategy right here. Then 3, you're back down to 0.05%. Try to avoid 3 tight ends in this format. And then 4, it's not a good strategy to take 4. It was way better to take 4 tight ends in an earlier strategy I did in the video than it is in this one. So just be creative with this tool if you actually do have access to it. Again, we're getting so much free publicity out of this one right here because I do really love this tool. And since Underdog is a 3 wide receiver format, as I explained earlier, this naturally feels a lot more comfortable to me. The main reason I love this strategy this year, again, is because I love Jalen Hurts in the 4th round. I think it is a screaming value that if you could get Jalen Hurts in the 4th, you take him, you continue to hammer this strategy, especially when you get an A.J. Brown to stack him with in the 2nd round or the 3rd round, for example. And I think that when you look at running backs in round 5, which is what we haven't touched yet, anybody between Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, Travion Henderson, and even sometimes Alvin Kamara in round 5 feels pretty good to me. Now, I would say that I lean more towards Kenneth than I do with Alvin Kamara, and definitely more with Kenneth than I do with Chuba. But it is a situation where I do always feel comfortable coming away with one of those 4 running backs in particular. So again, let's look at a team that I did like that recently. I got Brian Thomas Jr. at the back of the 1st, then turned around and got Drake London right after that. So I've got 2 strong wide receiver 1 potentially right there. Then I got Mike Evans at the back of the 3rd and turned around and got Lamar Jackson in the 4th. And then I got Travion Henderson at the back of the 5th round. So I felt really good about that team right there. I think that has a lot of pop potential. I like my first 3 wide receivers, and getting Chris Olave as my wide receiver 4, as you can see in a couple rounds later, also felt really good as well. This is a strategy, again, I'm leaning more towards than it is a statistical strategy, because I do want to utilize both of those types of strategies. And the last draft strategy that I've utilized a bunch this year, just naturally off the cuff, is wide receiver 1 in round 1, wide receiver 2 in round 2, running back 1 in round 3, wide receiver 3 in round 4, and wide receiver 4 in round 5. So again, this is also just a natural feel to me because, again, it is a 3 wide receiver format with a flex. So that means that the chances that you could have 4 wide receivers scoring points for you on a weekly basis is very high. So I like to have strong wide receivers at the beginning of fantasy drafts on Underdog in particular, because the roster construction just kind of asks for it. Now, this playoff advancement rate is much stronger than the last one. 21.6%. Still not the best we've seen, but definitely a strong one. And then your semi-advancement rate is actually a little bit down, but still very strong. 1.47% chance of making the semis. A strong number right there you want to pursue. And then your finals advancement rate, 0.13, stronger than last time. But again, not the best numbers right there. It's a feel thing for me based on ADP this year and what I've seen from these players. And then you look at a recent team that I did just like this. Puka Nacua, A.J. Brown, Chase Brown, Travis Hunter, and Jalen Waddle were my first 5 picks there. And I love that type of strategy. It's something I'm going to continue to utilize right here, because I think when you combine the ADP with the statistical advantage you've had over the years, it's a strong strategy to pursue. Now, I want to reiterate again, I do not think that you should be utilizing this tool that we went through today on every single draft. There is definitely a human element to fantasy football drafts that you cannot quantify. ADPs on players change. Values change every year on players. This is just something that you have to always adjust to in fantasy. So make sure to stay flexible. But these are my favorite draft strategies so far on Best Ball in 2025 fantasy football. So let me know which strategy that you think sounded the best in 2025. And if you want to see the breakout wide receivers, the smartest drafters are taking right now, click on this video right here.